sure you have a quorum.
Excellent, thanks. Next up, let's all stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Next up, we have the approval of the minutes of our committee dated July 26, 2022. If there aren't any corrections or changes, do we have a motion? Motion by Commissioner Lubes, support by Commissioner Joliet. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Minutes approved. Next up, we'll move on to the approval of the agenda. Again, if there aren't any corrections or changes, do we have a motion? Motion by Commissioner Lubes, support by Commissioner Gershenson. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Agenda approved. Next up, we'll move on to our first public comment. As a reminder, this is specific to items that are on the agenda, and individuals will get 3 minutes. So at this time, I'd like to open up public comment. And first individual, please make your way to the head of the table. State your name and community in which you reside in.
Hi, good morning.
Good morning.
Appreciate the opportunity to speak with you this morning. My name is Robert Kittle. I'm the Mayor Pro Tem for the City of Auburn Hills. I want to discuss the transit movement that's going on with you right now. I am just a little concerned about the timing of it. It seems to be going very fast, and it's a very complex matter. Not to discredit any prior meetings or conversations, but as you know, we in Auburn Hills had opted out. We decided to try to opt out earlier this year, and it was for specific reasons. Primarily, it was a system that wasn't working well. Mechanically, service, communications, we were struggling on a lot of fronts. Our decision to send the resolution into the County Commission or the OCPTA for opt-out considerations was really to primarily start a conversation to try to figure out how we can do better. My concern with what I see in front of me over at 0.95 mil for 10 years countywide, A, is the loss of local control that it gives, but it's also going to take a system that's $20 million a year approximately and turn it into a $66 million operation, so it's going to triple the size of something that we feel is broken. We think this could end up being one of the worst catastrophes that a government decision makes. We're not against transportation. We're actually in support of it. We wanted to keep it in Auburn Hills, but we expected better service for our residents. We would just ask that you slow down, even continue the millage as it is with the opt-in, opt-out provision for the communities versus getting into something that could be very problematic in the future, both from a local control, possibly taxation without representation for those northern communities that can't benefit from it. Let's slow down, use clean heads, and try to think this thing through with the folks that are going to be on the streets working with it, the locals and the provider, and let's do a better job for the taxpayers in Oakland County rather than jam something through that seems like it might be a little problematic. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Good morning. Please state your name and community in which you reside in.
Great. Good morning. My name is John Waterman. I live in Saline, Michigan, and I run an organization called PEAK, which is dedicated to the empowerment of individuals in active modes of transportation: biking, busing, and walking. This issue of transportation is the greatest barrier faced by people with disabilities. We have a broken system. We have a system that sets up lines and divides up situations where people with disabilities cannot cross. We have communities that have opted out. They do not allow individuals with cognitive impairments to travel. An 8% employment rate for people with disabilities with cognitive impairments. These are individuals that we can work with. These are individuals that I work with. We run a program in Farmington Hills right now at the Visions Unlimited, and we have one route. Individuals cannot get to Novi. They cannot get to the state fair. They cannot visit your friends. I know there's some local providers that say we provide ADA service, but they're not picking up individuals outside of that community and bringing them to their friends. How many of you live and work, visit your friends, and shop in the same small community you live in? I understand the concern about taxation. I'm probably one of the cheapest guys you'll ever meet. I believe we need to invest our money where it needs to be. The system is broken. The system is troubled, and the system is dividing our communities. By not having transit and not having a full transit system, we are saying people with disabilities do not deserve the same opportunity we have. We pay taxes on our roads that we may never drive on. We need buses. We need more buses going more places so an individual who does not drive can have full access to our community. I will be bringing students next meeting. I did not hear about this meeting till very late. You will hear their stories of what it means to not have the opportunities. This is a disability issue, and this is the biggest issue they face in their life right now. Thank you.
Thank you. Good morning.
Good morning. As a person who actually has a disability and reading this public access information for these meetings, if you require special accommodations because of a disability, please contact the Board of Commissioners at the number at least 3 business days in advance of the meeting. 3 business days. So as a person with a disability in Oakland County, Michigan, I asked when I entered this meeting today, could I get the updated language that was redrafted late last night in a Democratic unrecorded caucus meeting, and I was refused that information. They say, oh, that's all in compliance with Open Meetings Act. I disagree. I actually have been observing this board for over a year, and I see very little that is actually in compliance with the Open Meetings Act. The intent of the Open Meetings Act is actually to be forthright and open with the public. You do the opposite. The fact that these things are using Democratic caucuses instead of an executive committee from the get-go is a violation of the Open Meetings Act. The fact that the most important decisions are spun off to ad hoc committees and study groups where nobody knows when anything is going on, that is a blatant violation of the Open Meetings Act. And the fact that I repeatedly download, and it's different, the packets that we are supposed to be given as a public for the financial transparency of this entire county is despicable and not only does not meet basic business standards for financial reporting. Public financial reporting standards are actually much higher, and I would assert that last year's entire budget hearings that had no links to any financial data whatsoever were completely out of line, and the fact that you keep making budget adjustments instead of working within budgets, which is how public is supposed to be run, this entire thing is a complete sham, and I feel abused as a citizen of this county because people from outside the county keep getting invitations and heads up and for things that the county citizens are not told about. So it's offensive to me that someone comes from Saline to bring his students to explain how we should be funding them, and then at a different meeting they're saying, oh, there's no foreclosures yet. We have contracted with an outside online auction house that plans to auction off all of our foreclosed property by August 12th. So this entire week is really just a distraction to sell off our county, in my view. And the fact that I walk into a meeting where you've changed documents knowingly and refuse to give the citizens the revised documents before the meeting and say, oh, well, it's uploaded now. Well, this is completely unacceptable, and I am not okay with the way this county is being run. This is fiscally irresponsible, and I'm at the point that I have zero confidence in the administration of Oakland County, Michigan. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Kennedy. Good morning.
Morning. My name's Sharon Carter. I'm out of Southfield.
You're what?
I'm from Southfield. I've been reading about the desire to expand the SMART bus system to provide increased transit options. And I know public transit is an important option for those who do not own a car and for other reasons. Having said that, in general, a traditional bus system with fixed routes spread far apart does not provide an efficient method of transportation in today's suburban environment. Rather than adding more buses and routes, I believe it is time to look for more modern and more convenient ways to support those who need or choose to use public transportation. I happen to live near a major street that has bus routes on it. Often I have noticed that the buses are largely empty. Instead of buying more large buses, I believe we should look into the option of smaller vehicles for many routes, and certainly for off hours. They would be far less expensive to operate, and that savings could be used to provide better service. One example, has anyone looked into coordinating bus routes along with Uber or Lyft? That could be the service system or the feeder system that serves buses. Another example is the very successful rideshare programs used in the Metro Detroit area. Have you looked into coordinating bus routes to major areas with significant parking? I do not know how viable these ideas may be. What I do believe is that the residents of Oakland County and surrounding counties would likely be much better served by something different than a traditional bus system. Please take the time and money for an open investigation of the options before proposing to expand the system that we currently have. We need more ideas before pouring out more money. Thank you.
Thank you. Good morning.
Morning. Ross Baranco, Novi. As far as the handicap go, there's Uber, there's Lyft, there's families, there's friends. I don't see why the population of Oakland County has to provide them free service to buses. And I don't think that the county should be overrunning all the small communities, the local communities, and just telling them, you're going to have to do this. I think all of them should have the options of opting out and not have their authority, their local authority, overrun by the county commission. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who would like to speak? Good morning.
Good morning, Tasha Shurkin from Clarkston. I'm just going to reiterate the sentiments that we've heard this morning. And the biggest challenge I have is if you look at how the smart buses operate, it's a huge deficit. So we're just going to keep pouring more of our taxpayer money, your taxpayer money too. I'm assuming commissioners also pay taxes. So instead of finding fixing a broken system, we're just going to keep dumping money in and continue to feed it with more taxes, and there's no end in sight. So I don't know. I understand public transportation is something that people need to focus on, but I don't think our approach is the right approach. So thank you.
Thank you, Tasha. Good morning. Please state your name and community in which you reside in.
Good morning. My name is Megan Owens. I'm a current resident of Detroit, and I work with an organization called Transportation Riders United. We work with folks from all across the Southeast Michigan region and have for 20 years because we believe everyone should be able to get where they need to go, regardless of whether they personally drive. And I want to applaud the board for considering this countywide transit resolution. This is something that for years has been discussed. There have been many, many studies and work groups and discussions, and it is consistently brought up as one of the biggest barriers for our seniors and our substantially aging population. It is one of the biggest barriers for people with disabilities. It is one of the biggest barriers for low-income residents whose car might happen to break down, but they still need to get to work while their car's in the shop. So ensuring, I do wish that there had been more, that the draft plan that was shared, the outline of the services that was shared yesterday had been shared much earlier, because I think there's a lot to recommend it. One of the wonderful things about Oakland County is the many different types of places, the variety of places we have within the county. People can choose a wide range of areas to live. And with this proposal, assuming that that you put it on the ballot and the voters choose to support it, it would give people a wide variety of options for getting around too. So in addition to having housing options and urban, rural, suburban options, you'd also have a wide range of transportation options. This would put investment into rural transit providers to ensure that those rural transit providers can get people where they need to go when they need to go, not just in very limited hours. Ensure that people can cross borders, because our lives don't end at our township border. It would also invest, as was suggested, in an Uber-like system with on-demand service, door-to-door service in a lot of communities where a fixed route bus might not be the best way. And it would improve and expand on those fixed route buses. So depending on where you are in the county, you will have an option for a variety of different transportation choices, but it would link the community together. So again, I urge you to move forward with this and to give the people of Oakland County the choice of whether they want to invest in public transportation. Thank you.
Thank you, Megan.
Madam Chair, can we reapproach?
Yes, I think we need to.
During our second public comment is typically when we do second opportunities to speak.
If I'm not able to stay for the whole meeting, can I just make another quick comment in that regard?
I would like to say yes, but unfortunately, due to our tight schedule today with interviews, we are strapped for time. However, if you'd like to just quickly write something, I can make sure that it'll go into the record for public comment.
Okay.
Thank you. Is there any other individuals who would like to speak during this first public comment? Seeing none, I will close public comment. Alrighty. Seeing that we have no items under communication, we'll move forward with our consent agenda. We have 4 items under our consent agenda. We've got item A, resolution designating September 11th through the 17th as Michigan Patriot Week. Item B, resolution designating September 17th to the 23rd as Constitution Week in Oakland County. Item C, resolution designating September 19th to the 25th as National Adult Education and Family Literacy Week. And item D, resolution declaring September 9th to the 18th as Welcoming Week in Oakland County. Commissioners, if there's no questions or comments, do we have a motion to accept all items underneath the consent agenda? We have a motion by Commissioner Lubes, support by Commissioner Gershenson. All those in favor signify by saying aye. 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 Opposed? Consent agenda is approved.
Sorry, those are resolutions. I apologize.
That's okay. Commissioners, we're going to go on back and just do a prompt vote to approve all the items underneath the consent agenda. That's okay.
Madam Chair, you have 5 yeas, 0 nays.
5 yeas, 0 nays. Next up, we're going to move on to our regular agenda. The first item on our regular agenda is the Oakland County Land Bank Authority interviews. As a reminder, over the past few LAGO meetings, we've discussed opening up applications. During our last LAGO meeting, we narrowed down individuals across 3 different categories. And as a reminder, we have narrowed our list of applicants from the city official to 2 individuals, the township official to 1 individual, and the general public for 4 individuals. And at this time, as we move forward with our first interview, I'd like to request to have the cameras off during interviewing, and when we complete the interviews of each individual, we can turn the cameras back on. history, we haven't done that.
It's up to you.
Well, that's been what we've done, is
It
we've
is.
always.
So at this time, I'd like to request that the cameras be turned back off while committee members discuss the interviewees that we heard from this morning. All right. Now that the cameras are on, at this time, we're going to move forward with individual votes for each of the 3 members, interviewees under the general public seat. So first, Commissioner Gershenson made a motion to recommend Martin Manna for the general public seat. Do we have support? Support by Commissioner Lubes. So at this time, please prompt the vote.
Okay. This will be general public, man. Okay. Madam Chair, you have 3 yeas, 2 nays.
3 yeas, 2 nays, motion carries. Next up, I can make my own motion, right, for Kathleen Duffy?
If you want it,
Okay, so I would like to follow suit and make a motion to bring forward Kathleen Duffy.
But we just did the general public, right? And that passed?
So we're, what was requested by Commissioner Jackson was to do a vote on each individual member under the general public before the final recommendation of
Okay.
one individual under the general public.
Okay, so we're doing nominations then?
Yes, thank you.
Nominations. Okay.
I would like to move forward with making a motion to nominate Kathleen Duffy under the general public seat. Do we have a support?
I'll support.
Support by Commissioner Joliet. Please prompt the vote.
Okay. Madam Chair, you have 1 yea and 4 nays.
1 yea, 4 nays, motion carries.
It fails.
Or, I'm sorry, motion fails.
Yes.
Thank you. That's a first. Next up, we've got our last individual, our next individual, which is Margaret Brown. I believe Commissioner Jackson has made a motion to nominate Margaret Brown under the general public seat. And do we have support? Support by Commissioner Gershenson.
Okay.
And please prompt the vote.
Motion failed. You have 1 yea and 4 nays.
1 yay,
4
4 nays, motion fails. Next, we'll move forward with, do we need to move forward, commissioners, with the 4th individual?
What 4th? Who, George Levine?
George Levine.
Oh, I don't think anybody's recommending.
Okay, so given that there is nobody recommending George Levine, we'll now move on to the initial motion of recommending Kalfani Stevens for the city official, nominating Jeffrey Campbell for the township official, and nominating Martin Manna for the general public seat. Please, do we have a motion? Motion by Commissioner Lubes, support by Commissioner Gershenson. And please prompt the vote.
Madam Chair, you have 4 yeas, 1 nay, motion carries.
4 yeas, 1 nay, motion carries. All right, commissioners, thank you so much. And again, I want to thank all the individuals who expressed interest in the Oakland County Land Bank Authority, and for those who took time out of their day to interview this morning. So, thank you.
Yes, great people.
Really, truly. Next up, we'll move on to item B of our regular agenda. We've got Parks and Recreation grant acceptance with Semcog for the Planning Assistance Grant Program. Do we have a motion? Motion by Commissioner Joliet, support by Commissioner Lubes. Good morning, Melissa, and thank you so much for your time and patience this morning.
Oh, good morning. This is very interesting. Parks and Rec's very excited about the land bank, so this was great.
You're welcome.
So this is a grant from Semcog's Planning Assistance Grant Program. The grant itself is for $36,832.50, which was the maximum award amount for this grant. So essentially, as we've been looking at, potential ARPA projects and working more with certain communities within the county, we've been meeting a lot with various communities across the county, including all of the communities along the 9-mile corridor. And through those meetings, we learned that there's a strong interest in using that corridor as a way to really connect those communities, provide pedestrian connectivity, non-motorized transportation, a lot of great community recreation, public resources available in that area. So this essentially would be a grant facilitated by Oakland County Parks, but really the process will be led by the communities to work on this project. So the total project amount, which we're working with OHM on, is $100,247. So Parks and Rec is contributing the match funding for the full project, which is about $63,000. So the communities are very excited. I handed around a letter that they've all signed that didn't make it into the packet, saying, all the city managers are very supportive. We've met a few times. They're very excited about it. So we're ready to kick it off as soon as we can.
Excellent. Thank you, Melissa. Commissioners, any questions, comments? Alrighty, seeing none, please prompt the vote.
Madam Chair, you have 5 yeas, 0 nays.
5 yeas, 0 nays, motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you, Melissa. Commissioners, I'd like to move forward to receive and file the document that we received. So do we have a motion to receive and file the 9-mile corridor pathway feasibility study letter? Motion by Commissioner Lubes, support by Commissioner Gershenson. All those in favor signify by saying aye. 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 Opposed? Motion carries. Next up, we'll move on to item number C, which is Board of Commissioners resolution supporting Senate Bill 117 and House Bill 4902 to help Michigan businesses and workers procure contracts with the state of Michigan. And we've got our own committee member, Commissioner Jackson, to speak on it.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair. Basically, this is a non-binding resolution, but it speaks to our board giving support to Senate Bill 117 and House Bill 4902 to help Michigan businesses and workers procure contracts by giving priority to dollars going to Michigan-based companies, giving companies an added incentive to submit bids for state contracts with a higher probability of them being successful bids for the delivery of goods. So basically, this proposed legislation would give Michigan headquartered companies a 7-day window to resubmit a bid for a state contract if the lowest bidder on the contract is an out-of-state company. If the Michigan headquartered company rebids and the bid is lower than the out-of-state company's original bid, then the Michigan company would get the contract. And it's a bipartisan sponsored bill with Representatives Marshall Bullock, Democrat, Jason Wentworth, Republican, Adam Hollier, Democrat, and Jim Anich, Republican. So it's pretty non-controversial. It's pro-Michigan business, and I think it would be good to get on board with support of these bills.
Excellent. Thank you, Commissioner Jackson, and thank you for your leadership in bringing forward this non-binding resolution. With that being said, I know we have a motion by Commissioner Jackson. Do we have support for this item? Support by Commissioner Joliet. Is there any further discussion? Alrighty, seeing none, please prompt the vote.
Gershenson,
Yes.
Madam Chair, you have 5 yeas, 0 nays.
5 yeas, 0 nays, motion carries. Commissioners, before we go on to our last and final item, item D, which is the resolution approving language for an Oakland County public transit millage to appear on the November 8th, 2022 ballot, I'd like to request a 5-minute, no longer, but a 5-minute break, and then we'll come back and reconvene.
Thank you.
Okay. Without objection, stand on ease. Yeah. Been a long morning. Excellent. I'd like to call the Legislative Affairs and Government Operations Committee back to order at 10:42. Given we took a slight break, I'd like to have a roll call, please.
Okay. Commissioners Gershenson?
Here.
Joliet?
Here.
Jackson?
Here.
Lutz?
Here.
Woodward? as
Here.
Ex officio? Nelson?
Here.
Madam Chair, you have a quorum.
Excellent, thank you. All right, Commissioners, let's pick up where we left off. We are now on our last item under the regular agenda, item D, which is a resolution approving language for an Oakland County public transportation millage to appear on the November 8th, 2022 ballot. Do we have a motion? Motion by Commissioner Loop, support by Commissioner Jackson. And I believe we've got a variety of people here with us this morning. So we've got Chairman Woodward, and please, Chairman, will you introduce the fellows to the left and the right of you?
Certainly. Thank you, Madam Chair, and the committee for taking the measure up. To my right, I have Neil Greenberg, a transit expert that brings a wealth of experience of working in transit, costing out transit, improving efficiency of transit, not only throughout this region but around the country. Recently in contract helping shape a transit approach for the executive office and assisting us in this measure to make sure that we're working with real sound dollars to be able to deliver on the services that we're talking about. And to my left, I've got Highland Supervisor Rick Hamill, who is one of the founding members of the West Oakland Transit Authority, and I'm going to let him speak to his kind of experience and the importance of improving mobility and transit for people all around Oakland County. To set this up, and I know that many of us had lengthy conversation yesterday, and so I'll be a little more brief and go into any questions. We know that we have an aging population. The aging report in Oakland County lifted it up as a critical and essential issue. We know that employers are challenging to get people back into jobs, transportation being a contributing factor to that. We know that there are people with disabilities, veterans, others without a car, without access to the car, that are having challenges to get to places they need to go and more broadly where they want to go. And a current existing transit system that doesn't connect to the job centers, the health centers, and the major destination centers. And so what this proposal seeks to do is to move the conversation in Oakland County to be about how do we improve transportation for everyone, public transportation for everyone. It's pretty simple. It mirrors the approach that has been in place in Oakland County for a long time in the structure of a 0.9 mil over the 10 years. But really this proposal does three things. It's one of the things in the past that has been an ongoing, I would say, critique of transit conversations in the past was that it didn't appropriately take stake of the transit services and the variety of transit services that are in place already in Oakland County. This proposal builds on what we currently have in place and fully funds those efforts to not just be able to continue, but to be able to improve. Oakland County has really 4 transit agencies providing transit on a regular basis. You have SMART, that I think everyone here is familiar with. You have the North Oakland Transit Authority, you have the West Oakland Transit Authority, you have the Older Persons Commission. The latter 3 have all come together to try to tackle this problem because it is a recognized challenge that exists. So this proposal fully funds all of those operations at a base level funding to continue operating as they currently exist today. The next piece of the dollars, and it's reflected in the documents that you have attached, is an additional $20 million to expand what's working, particularly, and this is where I'm going to hand over to Neil to kind of talk broadly how this all works, but then I really want Supervisor Hamill to talk about the opportunities to expand, particular paratransit, commuter transit, dial ahead, schedule a ride, but also microtransit to be able to get people where they need to go and connect into the routes and other transit systems that currently exist. Those dollars are available to expand, to add additional routes, to connect to areas that don't currently have connections, to complete the loop, if you will, to close gaps in existing service, in addition to providing additional micro and paratransit services. And then So, to expand on what's working and expand to meet the need that currently exists out there. And then lastly, the capital improvements that are necessary. We know that this will require capital improvements. We know that buses and transportation units need to be replaced. We've got, in some cases, buses that are on the road that are beyond their longevity, but there are challenges to the current way that we replace those buses. This allocates annual funding to not just be able to help do those in quick form, but most importantly, be able to leverage the unprecedented amount of additional public transit dollars as a result of the Bipartisan Infrastructure Act that came to Michigan, north of $300 million slated for Michigan, of which will require matching dollars to be able to get things done. So in short, this is a Oakland County plan to address Oakland County transit needs that doesn't live in a vacuum, that can connect to things that are outside the boundaries of Oakland County, but measurably improve the transportation services available in Oakland County. So that's the high level. I'm going to hand it over to Neil to, kind of just talk, if you can just talk about the different strategies, what's paratransit, microtransit, fixed route, and then maybe talk a little bit specifically about the second, and kind of the expansion of routes, expansion and creation of new routes, and the other microtransit proposal that kind of went into this plan.
Yes, definitely. Great. Thank you, and thanks to the commissioners and the committee for being here. This has been, thus far, a really interesting, engaging project to work on. It's only going to get more interesting as more good questions and concerns come up. So if that's the what, the how is really what does this look like in terms of transit service? And it's not one size fits all, especially in a community as diverse as Oakland County. So one of the things to address kind of from the get-go is the types of transit service being kind of talked about, being considered as part of this package. It's not strictly large vehicles traveling fixed routes. In fact, of the $20 million or so for expansion, about 7 or 8 of that is for modes that use smaller, more flexible vehicles. So that would be additional paratransit service in areas that don't have it. Right now, there is NODA, there is WODA, there is OPC in parts of the county that don't have smart service, but that still leaves a large chunk of the county that doesn't have any service at all, mainly targeted for seniors, persons with disabilities, veterans, et cetera. So of the $20 million itemized for expansion, about 7-8 of that is or a part of the 7-8 of that is for additional paratransit service in areas that don't have it. There's also this new concept of microtransit. So this is really, really useful in a place like Oakland County, which quite frankly has a lot of landscape that's not that conducive for transit service. We get that. No one has concepts of plowing 40-foot buses down residential streets or areas that just aren't supportive. So microtransit is a more flexible service. You could use an app to request a ride, and it comes within 30 to 60 minutes. You could call if you don't prefer to use an app. And that's meant to kind of connect basic, everyday key locations that are nearby, or if you're going further, it can connect you to a fixed route if you're crossing boundaries and maybe taking a little bit of a longer trip. So those are key ingredients to the expansion component. And as for the fixed routes, there are a handful of new fixed routes identified. So fixed route meaning a full-size vehicle traveling a fixed route at a regular interval, regular schedule. And if you look at the sketch, there's kind of a thin baseline web of new fixed routes proposed. And those are based on the 3 Ds. Demographics, so looking at where there are senior populations, where there are larger concentrations of people with disabilities and veterans. Density, so where there is the population density and the job density for fixed route service to make sense. And the biggest D of all this is so important when you're thinking about transit, destinations, because you're taking transit to get somewhere. So Oakland County today, as we speak, has a number of key destinations that are out of the reach of any transit service. So when we talk, for instance, about OCC Highland Lakes campus, there's very limited transit service there, although it is in Waterford, so it does fall within the WODA service area. You could say the same thing about Providence Park Hospital. There's a number of other major institutions, DMC, Sinai, Huron Valley Hospital. There's a lot of jobs there, there's appointments there, there's real need to access places like that. So when you do see the kind of thin, fairly sparse web of these proposed fixed routes, they're really anchored on those destinations, and of course the other two Ds, demographics and density. So that's kind of what goes into it. You can also see how it does interface with some of the current smart routes. And there's work to be done to improve those and to get more out of those. There's no question about it. But the whole package is really an evolved package. It's not a one-size-fits-all thing. It does take into account the great work that WODA and NODA and OPC are doing and really brings them into the mix, whereas previous attempts at doing this really kind of haven't. They've also been a lot more one-size-fits-all, where this is really acknowledging that there's a lot of different tools to solve a challenge that has a lot of different dimensions.
Great. Thank you very much, Neil. Clearly, he had more coffee than I did this morning. He can go on forever. But no, I mean, it's really been it's been a joy, to work with him. I appreciate his insight and resource to figure out how to price this and sustain it, with a long-term lens of making sure that this can work. And so now I'd like to, hand it over to Supervisor Hamel to kind of talk from his perspective and the value that this brings to the mobility landscape in Oakland County.
Well, thank you very much, and I appreciate the opportunity to have this discussion. Just as a side here, I was asked a question a little earlier. It appears that I've changed my tune or my path here as to why I support this thing. I think the key is to go back in history. In 2012, I became a supervisor at Highland. I found out we had these 5 buses. And I said, who manages those? They're running around, they're driving around, but I have no personal idea, ironically, what's going on, how are they working? Well, it turns out we have a group of one poorly paid individual that's a director and some volunteers that were making this thing happen. And so I said, this is really inefficient. It doesn't seem like it's the right, there should be some kind of management. I should know more of what's happening. And we shared this system with Milford and Milford Township. It was funded by, community credits and basically just no money from general fund at all. So it was all grant. So we were totally restricted about what we could do because you can only go do so much with no money. And so I started to go into conversations with Milford and Milford Township and say we need to do a little bit more. We need to kick in a little bit more to make this work, and we need to maybe look at expanding this program for other communities. And it didn't go over too well. So what ended up happening is Highland took it on by themselves. And my good neighbor to the east, Rick Kowal, Township Supervisor for White Lake, kept telling me, he says, we see your buses drive by our bus all the time. Why are we doing this? And I said, hey, let's get together. So the next thing you know, we decided we would form WODA. And the reason we did it was we thought if we could get together, we can maximize the dollars and be able to just actually exponentially increase the ridership. So the net result was that we thought, okay, we're going to get we have meetings each month. It's called OCATs with the township supervisors, and there's 15 to 20 supervisors that show up on a monthly basis. Not to talk politics, but they're mostly Republican. And the word that I would always get back is, well, that's too much money. We don't see that we have the resources to be able to fund. Some of them had their own buses. They couldn't see how they could make this thing work. My thing is that I could see down the road that there may be some possibility that a millage would be passed that we would have no choice about. And that was always the big scare tactic, the RTA. They're going to come in, they're going to take our money, and they're going to run south, and we're going to get nothing for it. So my goal was to say, hey, instead of having nothing for it, why don't we form a bus program that's basically county-wide that takes care of this, and then we can join together, we can look for resources, so on and so forth. And what we ended up having was a year of, I don't know, Karen, if you ever came to any of the meetings. I think
the preliminary ones I did when you.
Yeah,
guys
we
did it.
had lawyers, attorneys from every community. We hammered out all kinds of ideas, and it finally just broke down to where it was Waterford, White Lake, Highland, and ironically, an opt-in community, Walled Lake. And it has expanded fantastically in terms of ridership. Now, granted, it's a social program that doesn't have any way of producing enough funds to pay for itself. Our director that I hired, Kim Viner, who I think some of you may have met or heard from, is a dynamo in terms of grants and getting money. But, you know, you can only be a dynamo for so many days and you'll blow up. And so what ended up happening was we tried to get this group to get together, and we decided, you know what, this is a very good opportunity that if a millage should come along, we need to be included in it. And not just because we want to have a micro operation. The idea is this is an opportunity to service all of Oakland County, not just what SMART used to do, you know. So it wouldn't be, and in the fortune to be able to, we started out working with Hillary and Dave at the very beginning, and they talked about VIA, and they were getting all this information, Brett Rassinger, and the net result is that all of a sudden this word millage comes in, and ooh, I got to be involved in this. We need, as a group, WODA needs to be involved in this. Had an opportunity to get involved in it, and my goal was to say that there's no reason we can't have transit in all of Oakland County. If you're going to have one millage and everybody's going to pay, then everybody should play. You should have transit in your community. And the irony is the way that WODA works and NODA works, we're on demand. We do not pick up, NODA does pick up regular riders, you know, non-senior and that, but we are at this current time a senior and disabled. And the formula works phenomenally well in rural environments. And if you look at the maps on here, the pink that's out there, you don't see any routes running out there. The irony is there is no route. The route is you call, we go. We pick you up, we take you back. And they're small vehicles, you know, some are 15 passenger buses. We've actually been reducing the size. NODA's been doing the same thing. Incredibly efficient, but limited because of resources and number of buses available and so on and so forth. Right now, our communities, what we decided to do, now Waterford has, I think, what, 72,000 plus or minus people?
Yeah.
White Lake's got 32 to 37,000. Highland has 20,000. We as a group decided what we would do is equally share the cost, meaning that we're not White Lake, we're not Highland, we're not Waterford, we're WODA, West Oakland Transit. And that means that we're going to all equally commit to servicing the people in that area. So Waterford, it turns out, has grown. They had way less than we had in the very beginning. Riders, they've grown to be the largest user. Walled Lake turned out to be 7,500 people in Walled Lake. They're the second largest user. Highland has grown tremendously, and so has White Lake. So the use of the vehicles has gotten to the point where we're at our maximum. This is the perfect opportunity because, one, I'll say it's pretty sure shot that it can get, I mean, I'm looking at it, I actually had an opportunity to be a party to some of the verbiage in here, and the verbiage being all of Oakland County, not just the existing services. The fact that we needed to have some resources come to WODA, that was put in there, and I really appreciate that opportunity. And I look at the rest of it and I say, we fit into this. We not only fit into paratransit, we fit into microtransit because it's almost the same thing. And so what we've offered up is that WODA's not afraid to take it on. WODA's not afraid to grow. And WODA's not afraid to be part of to be an Oakland County transit system. And so we're not looking at it as just West Oakland. We're looking at it as how can we be party to all of Oakland and be an assistant to make this thing work so it doesn't fail. And We've got the software to handle it. We've got the dynamo at the top of our group right now that knows how to make it fly. And the other part we have is we know how to make it work on the low end of a budget, where when you take a look at SMART, and I'm not going to hammer SMART for any reason, they are actually the ones that helped us be able to make it happen. I mean, they gave us the buses. We're opt-out. All our communities except for Walled Lake are opt-out. So the ability to have those buses is what made this be able to move forward. But they're on that end where you got to dump big piles of money from the top and see how it filters down. We've learned to see how to make it move up the ladder at the lowest level of cost. So I think we have a better handle on the dynamics of cost and the dynamics of how we can move forward and how can we fit into the numbers that you have projected here. It takes a lot of money to make these things happen, but it's the perfect opportunity to have a transit system in the whole county. It will take time because, number one, you can't get buses, so, and you have to have the resources for them, so on and so forth. It doesn't work when you really try to have a whole bunch of little independent operations because you're replicating costs that are too valuable to waste. And this is the opportunity to reduce the amount of replication, to have the opportunity to be able to work countywide, and to cover all those little odds and ends. I think if you look at the spreadsheet that Dave handed out, you can see the micro-transit areas. You can see, for one, let's start up at the top at where WODA has they cover their area. Then you can, it says new paratransit coverage, West County, could be operated by WODA. So you can, and then if you move down, you'll see where WODA can play into these other operations. So that's the kind of thing where I realize this is the opportunity to be able to take advantage of something that a lot of our community leaders don't want. They don't want it because they're afraid of the cost. It is a cost. Some people, Waterford's going to pay $2+ million. That's a tax on them. Highland's almost $1 million. Our budget or our operations are 0.6 mils. So you look at 0.6 mils, of course we don't operate only on 0.6 mils, there's other resources. But, so our taxpayers 0.6 mils for our operations, 0.95 mils for transportation. Well, I think what I've learned is you have to take away the individual cost and you have to look at it as how many additional people get added benefit from it. And that's where I see the 0.95 mils can add benefit to a huge number of people that are in the hidden world. They're the ones that can't drive, the ones that are living in a 300 square foot apartment, only get out once in a while when somebody comes to visit them. I've done Meals on Wheels, and you see these people that they're living off of money that was dictated when they retired 30 years ago. And they're just barely surviving. These buses have pulled people out of their dark holes in our community. And at first, a lot of the seniors were a little bit hesitant. I don't want to ride a bus. I don't want to be caught on that bus. Totally changed. So it's a program that's contrary to a lot of the feelings of our supervisors in our communities. The general rationale behind the contradiction is, what are we going to get for our money? My point of view is we've got an opportunity to give everybody something for their money and to build it that way. And so it's pretty sure there's going to be some, at my next OCAS meeting, there's going to be some people that go, what kind of idiot are you? I'm the idiot that says we got to work together. We can't put this in a political light like a lot of other stuff gets put. And we need to be able to service the people who have served us for years. And that's the ones that can't travel, don't have transit, and don't have resources. And that's what this is about. And that's why I support it. And I think it's I'm not afraid of this. I'm not afraid of losing my job. I don't care about that. I didn't get my job for the money anyways. I'm there for my public and my people, and I'm there for the rest of the county. So my people support it.
you. Commissioner Gershenson.
Well, I mean, you take my breath away, Supervisor Hamel.
We're gonna put you in t-shirts.
Just saying that you support the greater good is very gracious of you, and certainly what I believe as well. But the fact that this makes sense is a tribute to your work, Chairman Woodward, to Greenberg, your assistants, and all the people that said you need a plan. And that was a big sticking point for us, was we didn't want to double dip those communities. We wanted to value you, and this plan really does. So I'm just proud of this effort, and I just wanted to comment that the one change that was made from yesterday's meeting to today was spelling out NOTA. It was written in the resolution as NOTA, and the change was spelling it out. So
In the specific ballot language. It was spelled out in the resolution, but in the actual ballot language, where it lists out this millage was approved, revenue will be dispersed to Oakland County SMART, NOTA, and it spelled out Older Persons Commission, West Oakland Transportation Authority, and just to make sure that the ballot language spelled out.
well, I
what NOTA is.
appreciate that, because sometimes the fact of what happens gets lost in the emotion, but that is the fact of that change from yesterday to this morning. So my gratitude, thank you. This is going to be a very exciting effort, and hopefully the residents are going to want it.
Thank you, Commissioner. To echo Commissioner Gershenson, Chairman Woodward, thank you for your leadership in moving this initiative forward of getting the Oakland County Public Transportation millage on the November 8th ballot. So thank you. And Neil and Supervisor Hamel, thank you so much for your collaboration and work and time that you've put into this as well. I do have two quick questions. Go ahead. My first question is in the attached documents under the summary where it gives the breakdown of the millage and capital improvements. From my understanding, we're looking at $7 million for capital improvements. Within that, the question that I have is, in communities that have new proposed routes, will they be given priority of capital improvement projects versus communities that presently have routes going through their communities, and who decides that?
Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, that's a great question, and that's $7 million per year in capital, and there's a number of different sources to amp that up with the grants, federal, state, to really magnify that $7 million to quite a bit more. So in terms of how that moves forward, one of the things that SMART has done fairly well over the past couple years is they've been on a campaign to upgrade basic infrastructure along current routes. So not all, but many of the current locations served by SMART services already do have these basic upgrades. And we're talking things like sidewalk connectivity or a concrete pad. So if you're waiting for the bus, you're not waiting in a puddle or a gravel pit or something like that. So there has been an effort to do that in areas that currently do have fixed route service. As far as some of the new areas, yeah, the effort would be to coordinate these capital investments with the service investments. So it's not going to happen all at once, of course. But as there's a new fixed route, say going this way or that way, let's say up Dixie Highway, which is a job-dense corridor. There's a lot of apartments. There's a number of destinations. The capital efforts would be kind of targeted to where the fixed route is going. And that's to use the example of infrastructure like sidewalks and things like that. There's also, of course, vehicles. So this helps to provide local match to some of the smaller providers such as NOTA and WOTA and OPC, where their vehicle needs are, and that's kind of on a cycle, depending on eligibility, mileage, vehicle age, all sorts of other things. So it's a bit of a moving target. It just kind of depends. What is the condition of existing infrastructure? Where's kind of the squeakiest wheel? And that's going to change from year to year. But that funding, that investment will kind of move, and will follow the service.
Excellent, thank you. And lastly, given the short time frame between now and November 8th, what measures are going to be taken in order to inform voters?
I think that's a great question. I think that particularly all the agencies that, provide transit, have a duty to make sure that this is on the ballot. I think as public leaders, I've talked to a number of public leaders around the region, whether that's a mix of community forums, earned media, getting information out. If to the extent there are costs, there are, clearly people who've been working on this space for a long time that are seeking opportunities to raise funds to help communicate that this proposal is on the ballot and what it means on a bigger scale. That this is going to be a conversation that is going to be talked about. As I mentioned earlier, that this mirrors a similar proposal in Macomb County, in that Macomb County has a county-wide levy for the very same amount, and so that there's an opportunity to talk about it in the same context. And as these fixed routes exist, they also connect to routes that go to Macomb County. So there's a way to share all of that. And so there's I think all of us as public leaders have a responsibility to communicate to their respective communities. I know that I will, and working with my colleagues, make certain that councils, school boards, and other things have that information and putting it out. Senior centers, especially those communities that are in desperate need to have access to these services, to make sure that that word is getting out, as well as to allies and supporters out there that believe in this and want to make certain that the public knows that this will be on the ballot, with a host of other issues on the ballot this November.
Sure. Thank you. Commissioner Joliet?
Thank you for your detailed explanation, Neil. I appreciate you expanding more on the transportation, the routes, and those types of things. I like the idea of the micro-transit, especially in northern Oakland County, and even in southern Oakland County. Those large buses or even smaller cars are going to have a hard time making it down those subdivision streets to go door to door to pick up customers. So capital improvements will be much needed with our current infrastructure that we have. Question regarding the smart credits. Right now, communities are operating, some of them are operating that don't have an opt-in, but they get credits to have a bus. And what will happen if this millage passes to those communities that have buses from SMART? Will those go away? SMART will have to accommodate a larger volume should this millage pass. So will they reconfigure how that program works?
There's two programs right now. There's the Municipal Credits Program, which is a state program. SMART administers it, and all communities qualify for municipal credits. So
okay.
Let's say Rose Township, not an opt-in community, but a community within the metropolitan area. So they qualify, as do all communities, for municipal credits, which is a state program. SMART's the pass-through. So that money will continue to be passed through because that's a state program. SMART itself also has a community credit program, which is eligible, which current opt-in communities are eligible for. So if you're Southfield, for instance, in addition to getting the municipal credits, which is a state program, you also qualify for community credits through SMART. In this scenario, there is no more opt-in, opt-out. So the community credit eligibility expands, and there's more resources to kind of extend those benefits to all communities in Oakland County. So effectively, everyone qualifies for community credits or equivalent.
So those communities will be able to keep the vehicles that they have. That system will stay in place. If they have a credit and they're using it for a SMART vehicle, they'll be able to keep that vehicle to run their own transportation that they have going on now.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, do you understand? That's an absolute question that has to be answered, because our NODA or WODA has SMART. Well, actually, they belong to the communities. That's what is kind of a weird deal. So Highland Township, quote, owns them, and Waterford owns them, and then we commit them to WODA for their use, and there's a lot of little kind of interplaying contracts in there that we have to be sure that we all of a sudden don't lose all the buses. Fortunately, WODA has purchased some of their own buses so that they're not tied to SMART, but not enough to at this point, to jump off to a quick start, But it's one of those things that if we have to know that answer, but I don't know how it's going to work.
Yeah. Right. But there's no version of this where the result is everyone loses their vehicles. Like, you know, the goal here is to expand.
Right, I just know that they're going to have to reconfigure
Yeah,
to adapt,
reconfigure.
adapt to
Yes.
the volume, but I want to assure those communities that have their own transportation set up that they're not going to lose that.
They will, right, absolutely. And I think also to underscore the $7 million annually of additional capital that's available to acquire more buses. So, I mean, that, again, to help to the expansion point of view for the microtransit and paratransit needs that are out there. I mean, the other, I think this is like something, and I don't know how much in the weeds that people want to get, is the systems and structures to maintain these vehicles. I mean, we've got, I think the WOTA system's got, buses on that are beyond their life expectancy. We've got to upgrade, for safety reasons, Department of Transportation requirements, all these other types of things. What's the process to move forward? And just think, the economies of scale, doing this all together, will save money and stretch those dollars to be able to deliver on that.
Thank you. Commissioner Jackson.
Thank you. I wish or would want to have Mr. Greenberg give us your introduction again and your history with this. I was so impressed with your grassroots beginnings.
You get a
in
t-shirt
this
too.
work.
Yeah, you know what?
It means a lot.
Well, thank you for that. And I guess probably the best way to say it is, and I can't take credit for this phrase, but I definitely relate to it. I'm an old bus driver who got lost in the administrative office and never found his way out. So I've worn a couple different hats in the biz, still got my commercial driver's license. My fantasy situation is someone says, quick, who has a CDL and can drive a bus? You have a CDL? I have a feeling I wasn't the only one here. But yeah, I've had the privilege and the joy and sometimes the frustration to work with a couple dozen different transit systems in all areas of the country, and there's always something to learn. It's a great industry in that there's such eagerness to share and learn from each other. I'm here in Oakland County. I'm kind of thinking like, how do they do this in Fairfax County, Virginia, or Snohomish County, Washington, or these other places where there's a lot of parallels, and how do we kind of take the best of concepts that are proven elsewhere and kind of customize them, tailor them for our unique local context here and make the best. So, it's great to be able to work in the space, and if all else fails, I'm going to get a job driving a bus for Rick.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioners, is there any further discussion on this item before prompting the vote? Commissioner Joliet?
I'd like to make a motion for an amendment.
Okay, Commissioner Joliet makes a motion for an amendment. Is there support? I'll support.
So I like that you have spelled out the verbiage of North Oakland Transportation and West Oakland Transportation and OPC, or Older Persons Commission. I would like to add that in the let me see, 1, 2, 3, fourth whereas, or I'm sorry, fifth whereas, to distribute, fourth whereas, to distribute the millage to the individual communities, if we could put in at a level of funding no less than, and I think you have stated NODA gets 1.6, WODA would get 2.2 million, and OPC, just to spell out the level of funding that is proposed in the resolution and make that at a level no less than. I don't know if I'm clear.
Like pulling out like these elements
Yes,
in there.
yes.
Can we take a 2-minute recess? Let me just check.
Sure, without objection. Okay. Alrighty. Now that we're back from our break, I'd like to reiterate the motion that's on the table. So Commissioner Joliet has made a motion for an amendment, and it looks like the amendment will include, so inserted in the fourth whereas clause, to add at a level of funding no less than 1.6 million for NODA, 2.0 million for WODA, and 1 million for OPC. And I supported that amendment, and so now, commissioners, it's open for discussion. Commissioner Gershenson.
Well, I love the idea of working together, and if this group thinks that's fine, that it's okay with me, but I get nervous putting in a definite amount when it is going to be fluctuating. So I'm just saying, is there language that could accomplish what Karen wants, but doesn't mention those specific amounts, because that could change?
Well, I think the no less is the verbiage. I mean, it's no less than.
No, that
But
establishes
you're
the
confident
floor.
in that.
Establishes a floor, exactly.
I mean, why I'm very comfortable with it is that for this to work, WODA has to not only be able to maintain what they're doing, but have to be hugely successful. For this to work, similar with NODA, when I talked with the executive director of some of these other transit agencies, I could feel the energy, like, well, we could figure this out. We won't necessarily have to be confined by the boundaries that's set in our current system. We can get people where they need to go. And so setting that as a floor, I think is appropriate. Similar to what's required to get off the ground. And if that gives more assurance, like this is, so we can tell the world this is what's happening, I feel.
Well, and I think that's an important message for us to get out to NODA, WODA, and OPC, is that we're actually writing in a guarantee. So I do like that.
Yeah, and I would argue like the guarantee and intent is captured in this document. So what Commissioner Joliet's doing is like taking some of that, putting it down, particularly to satisfy other public concerns in those areas.
And I understand, and I definitely can support it. It's just my own nervousness about when you put in a finite number and it's not a finite proposal, it's just not something I'm that comfortable with. But I
got assurance by the man who knows all the stuff. Yeah.
Well, and it's also worth adding, considering the say the revenue falls a little bit, okay. The hit of a $500,000 reduction to NODA or WODA or OPC would be devastating. $500,000 taken out of the $33 million going to the existing service, we could figure that out and reduce the pain.
Okay.
So I think from a practical standpoint, it's feasible.
Okay.
Okay. Is there any further discussion on the amendment? Alrighty. See none. Can we do a prompt the vote on the amendment?
Madam Chair, you have 6 yeas, 0 nays.
6 yea, 0 nays. Motion carries. Commissioners, is there any further discussion on the resolution as amended? Seeing Commissioner Joliet?
No.
So, no, based on the acceptance of my amendment, but I still would like this pulled off and to go on general for discussion. So even if I vote yes, this will still go on general.
It will have to go on the full board.
Full board.
Yes.
It won't
will not
be
on
on consent. Okay, all right.
And you can always request.
Okay.
Okay. Is there any further discussion on the resolution as amended? Seeing none, please prompt the vote on the resolution as amended.
Madam Chair, you have 6 yeas, 0 nays.
6 yeas, 0 nays. Motion carries. Thank you, Chairman Woodward, Supervisor Hamel,
everybody.
and Neil for joining us this morning. Thank you so much. All right, Commissioners, last up, our final item today is our second public comment. As a reminder, individuals will have the opportunity to have 3 minutes to talk on any items, whether it's on the agenda or not on the agenda. So at this time, I'd like to open up public comment. If you would like to speak, please make your way down to the head of the table and state your name and community in which you reside in.
Would you like to read in the comments from the Mayor Pro Tem from Auburn Hills first?
So I'll take my public comment right now and address that. So typically, we don't read them here in committee. They do move forward on public record that we inserted. And Pam, can you provide any specific?
Yeah, we will receive and file, or there will be part of
I
the
just
public.
wanted to make sure she wasn't forgetting them.
Oh, yeah,
No.
they'll be received and filed.
They'll be added to the packet after the meeting
Perfect.
under public comment.
Thank you.
Ross Baranco, Novi.
Good afternoon.
Kudos to Commissioner Jackson. I appreciate her speaking up for Margaret Brown. And I was wondering if there is some reason why there can't be 2 citizen representatives on it, and that will add in someone who seems like she would be a good watchdog over it, because she was the only one that said that there's some doubts about some things that sometimes happen in land banks, and that she would be watching for those. And it does, to the chair's concern, is we'll add in another double minority onto the board. And Catherine Kennedy had to leave, so she asked me to read this for her, that the HUD already had a program where citizens could buy the closed houses for back taxes. The land bank eliminates this. This land bank takes 50% of sale money for a tax capture to go to brownfield development. These contracts take opportunity away from residents to buy their first home. Land banks only benefit cities that have a problem selling real estate in their communities. We had a problem not having enough housing for the number of citizens who would like to buy homes to upgrade to Oakland County. Tax foreclosed properties should not be removed from citizens' homeowners' dreams. HUD money cannot be used legally for non-citizens by federal statute. That concludes what she wrote. And I'd like to comment on the millage for transportation. We already have 9.1% inflation, and it's probably being increased and beyond that. And then there's property values are going to be rising because of inflation. So that means that the citizens are already going to be paying additional property tax, and then you're going to put on a millage for transportation that they may never ever use, and it's just going to add to inflation because they're going to be paying more, and that just feeds into inflation, and it makes it more difficult for them to maintain their homes and keep their homes with these additional costs that they have to pay. And I'd like you to consider it, consider that as that's the primary goal of the Oakland County Commission, is to look out for the Oakland County residents. Thank you.
Thank you, Rose. Is there anyone else from the public who would like to address the Legislative Affairs Government Operations Committee? Good morning, or good afternoon.
I know, you guys like to wait for me. Thank you so much. I didn't know if I was going to make it. Heather Smiley, Lake Orion. I'm kind of going to bounce off of what Ross said. I know for the last year, several of us citizens have been coming out in regards to the increase in taxes that you guys keep pushing with all your inflated budgets and resolutions. But each time we bring that to attention, we are denied that there is actually no raise in taxes or foreclosed homes, which we now see that is completely untrue. I see in your 2023 fiscal budget that there is an overall property tax revenue net increase of over $16 million. That includes $16.1 0.5 taxable value increase in property, and a millage rate of 3.98, blah, blah, blah. Again, you guys are trying to incorporate another millage onto our property tax with no consideration to inflation, to gas, to groceries, to the regular average person who necessarily can't provide for their family, let alone pay additional property tax value. That's just going to add to the foreclosures. Jumping off of the land bank, if any of you have gone on to that tax ID link, it on the very first page says, if you're not a U.S. citizen, please fill out this information and attach your credit card. When has it been a good idea for local communities to sell their property to international investors and buyers? I don't see that being good for our taxable value in the future or our communities in the future. That's really something that should be, again, given the right to our citizens, to families. Is there any way to donate it to some of these, Habitat for Humanity programs to where they can rehab it for people in need? I mean, there's just got to be a better way. There's got to be a better way to keep our community safe from basically a sanctuary city, a sanctuary county, and a sanctuary state. We've got HUD grants that are through the state and federal, but now Oakland County is trying to push those through. Those are more tax dollars that are coming out of our pockets, and we're tired of it. You guys don't seem to be listening to the community. And while I know primary elections didn't go in my favor, I think it was a shakeup that somehow, some way, there is 32% of people who don't know my name that now know my name. So I think it's just a victory for the little people that we are starting to pay attention, and we are in your communities, and we can't afford what you're pushing. We can't afford the bills that you're passing. Some of us will have to move out of Lake Orion, Oxford. I've talked, not me, don't worry, I'm not going anywhere. Well, lots of people have decided that they have to sell their homes because they cannot afford what is going on. There's a lot of development, there's a lot of building, there's a lot of destruction of our communities, of the reasons that we moved to Oakland County. And I think that it's just something we got to step back and really take a look at the greater picture. How are these improvements or progressions going to affect our public safety, our community, our schools, our wages in the area? I also want to kind of touch base on the transit. While I know the resolution's been introduced to try to improve and help support some of our local commodities, I don't think getting in bed with SMART is really a good investment for our community. So I appreciate your time. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Good afternoon.
Hi, John Waterman. I am from Saline, Michigan, and I'm the executive director of Peak. We do work with individuals throughout Oakland County. Thank you so much. Moving this resolution forward is important. It is the step to making the difference in people's lives with disabilities. It's going to allow individuals to travel without having to beg for a ride, without having to plead a neighbor to get them somewhere. It's going to allow an individual to stand up on their own two legs, to move from place to place, to be independent. And this will allow individuals to become strong citizens that can vote and make their own decisions. As we talk about people being represented, I do not see anyone with a cognitive impairment sharing their story right now. I doubt many people have gone out and talked to someone who's trying to get a job and to be independent, to take care of themselves so they don't need others to take care of them. I thank what you've done to move this forward, and keep up the great work.
Thank you. Is there anyone else from the public who would like to address the Legislative Affairs and Government Operations Committee? Seeing none, I'd like to close public comment. Before we adjourn, Commissioners, I'd like to make a motion to receive and file 2 written public comments that we received. Do we have support? Support by Commissioner Joliet. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion approved. And lastly, without further objection, I'd like to adjourn this Legislative Affairs and Government Operations Committee meeting. So, thank you, everyone.